Hi all, this is lecture 10 on section 3.1 rectangular coordinate system. Okay, and this is where we get into our traditional graphing in two dimensions. So the XY coordinate plane that we describe here is exactly what you see here in my picture. It consists of an x-axis, which is right here, right? This line that goes across the middle. The y-axis, which is this one right here, the vertical one. The origin, which is this point at the middle. And let's see. And then quadrants. So our quadrants, we start labeling them in the top right where everything is positive. So this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Okay. And that's our coordinate system, right? So we essentially have two interlocking number lines. So a number line that goes left and right, and a number line that goes up and down. So down is negative, up is positive. And we want to be able to graph both points and equations and functions. So we're going to start out by plotting points. So we're going to graph the points 1, 2, -1, 3, 4, -1, and -2, -3. Okay. What's important to note here is that whatever's in the first position is your x coordinate, so that's left and right. And what's in the second space, the second coordinate is your y, and that is your up or down. Okay, so if I want 1, 2, that's telling me to go right 1, because right is positive, and up 2. So on my space here, I am going right 1 and up 2, and it lands me right here. So this is the point 1, 2. Okay. Same thing for the second one. -1 tells me to go the opposite of right, so left 1 and up 3. So I'm going to go left 1, up 3. That puts me up here. This is -1, 3. Okay. 4, -1 tells me to go right 4 and down 1. So that's going to put me over here. So this is 4, -1. And then lastly, -2, -3 tells me to go left 2, down 3. That puts me down here. This is -2, -3. So -2 on the x-axis, -3 on the y-axis. Okay, so there are the 4 points that we're graphing there. Okay, now at this point, we need to talk about things that you can do with points. So I can talk about the distance between 2 points. So I could talk about the distance between these two right here, connect them with a line segment. And we can also talk about where the midpoint is. So we're the middle of that, probably somewhere in here, right? Okay. Now, how do we find that, right? So here are the two formulas that we need. So the distance formula finds the distance between 2 points P and Q. Notice that P has x sub 1 and y sub 1. And Q has x sub 2, y sub 2, right? That just tells me the differences in the x's and y's. So the distance is going to be the square root of the difference in their coordinates squared. So it's going to be x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. Now you're squaring and adding things here, so none of the order actually matters. So it doesn't matter which one is your x1 and which one is your x2. It doesn't matter if you subtract the y's and square them first and put those x's second. Okay, but I'll show you an example of that in a minute. And the midpoint formula, what I liked, the midpoint, we're going to find two coordinates, right? Because the midpoint is a point, so we need an x coordinate and a y coordinate. And in each case, what you're going to do is you're going to add up your coordinates and divide by 2, kind of like averaging them, right? So x1 plus x2 over 2 and y1 plus y2 over 2, okay? And note that our midpoint is equidistant from P and Q, and it's on the line segment between P and Q, okay? So let's take our example from up here. So I have -1, 3 and 1, 2 as my 2 points. So let's talk about -1, 3 and 1, 2. And I want to know what's their distance and what's their midpoint. So the distance equals the square root of Now I'm going to take the two x coordinates, which is the -1 and the 1, and I'm going to subtract them. So 1 minus -1 squared, and then I'm going to do the same with the y values. So I'm going to subtract the two y values. And it doesn't really matter what order you go in, but let's be consistent. So I picked the positive one first. So let's make this my 0.1, and this is my 0.2. So my x1, y1, and my x2, y2. So that would be 2 minus 3 squared. And what do we get here? Well, we get 1 minus a -1 becomes 2 squared, which is 4. 2 minus 3 is -1 squared, which is 1, and I get the square root of 5. And if we put that in a calculator, we can get a distance here. This is 2.2, so 2.2 units on my on my graph. And you can kind of see that that kind of makes sense, right? Because you're going a little bit, it's longer than 2, right? Because the distance between the two left to right is 2, but not too much larger than that. And then we kind of got an estimate for what the midpoint should be. So let's go ahead and calculate that. So our midpoint is going to be equal to, now we want to add our two x's, so the blue one. So 1 plus -1 over 2, and then add your y's, 3 plus 2 over 2. And so that's going to give me 1 plus -1 is 0 over 2, and 5 over 2. And if I divide them out, that's 0 and 1.5. And if we go up to our graph, that's about where I put that, right? 0 means we're on the y-axis. And, oh, sorry, 5.5 is not 1.5. It is 5 halves is 2.5. Let's fix that. So it's 2.5. Much better. All right, so 0, 2.5 is right here, and it about matches what I drew, right? And I was just kind of sketching, so that's what we do. So that's how we find distance and midpoints, and that's going to be about it.